Netflix's The Stranger. It's from Harlan Coben and Nicholas Schindler of Red Productions. Danny Brocklehurst is writing the story with Harlan Coben's guidance. It's based on a novel he wrote, transversing things from the US setting to a British setting. It's an 8-part series, similar to the last Harlan Coben adaptations, Safe and The Five. And this starts with Richard Armitage taking his son to football and a stranger coming up to him and saying, "Your wife faked her pregnancy. I check into the fathership of the boys. They may not be yours." And that's the impetus. That's the start of the story. And it sends Richard Armitage into a bit of a state, trying to find out things about what his wife's been doing online with their bank account, etc. Meanwhile, there is a story about a beheaded alpaca that Siobhan Finneran's DC has to look into. And then there's a dead body found as well. So there's an awful lot going on.
It's not a dead body, is it?
No, it's an alive body that looks dead. I am apologetic. Sorry. Yes, I forgot that. No, he's alive. Sorry, that's not a spoiler. You find that out in the first episode. So those are the basics of that first episode. There's a lot going on. Each story is bonkers as the last.
Jennifer Saunders runs a coffee shop as well.
Yeah, and she's got 2 massive Irish wolfhounds. Will they be important? I don't know. We'll find out.
Did they behead the alpaca?
They could team up on it, maybe, or maybe they wouldn't need to. They're quite. Oh, I should also mention that the alpaca, alpaca farm lady names her alpacas by boy groups. So take that, we're all accounted for. But there was a member of One Direction missing.
I believe it was Louis.
I do. I know. I thought that as well. It's amazing what you retain from these programs.
I thought that was quite poetic, because wasn't Louis the one that left?
Saying that's the one that left. And I'm annoyed I know that, Gary. Sorry.
Sorry.
I'm so annoyed I know. So these Harlan Coben adaptations, they put me personally in a really tricky, critical position, because Nicholas Schindler runs Red Productions. She's lovely. We've spoken to her loads of times. She's given me a load of great feedback on the site. She's been instrumental in a lot of my favourite programmes. And yet these, I just find completely unbearable. When I'm watching them, I just think they're completely bonkers. I don't know who they're made for, who would fall head over heels, infatuated with them. I just cannot get on board at all. I just think they're silly.
I think you're going to get your answer in a minute.
Oh, well, I do know the answer. That's why I'm setting it up.
Let me tell you, Nicholas Schindler, I didn't like this. I loved it.
Oh, I forgot he used to do the Simon Cowell.
Simon Cowell. Keeping in there with the One Direction, aren't we, with the Simon Cowell?
You're sticking in One Direction. I put my hand up and say, I have now watched the whole series. So obviously, sort of like 2-3 episodes a day. I know what Luke is talking about because of Luke's previous conversations about these adaptations that Harlan Coben does. And I suppose the other thing I have to admit to is I'm a Harlan Coben book fan. He specialises in these kind of like missing people mysteries, very much family orientated, and he does do these sort of multiple strands that end up coming into an answer. And the good thing that those of you that are worried, like, will this end up with a satisfying sort of conclusion, I can tell you that there is a understandable answer to all the questions. This is not a situation where you're going to get lots of what ifs, maybes, and so-and-sos that don't end up having an answer. That said, I can see from episode 1 why you perhaps struggle with it, Luke.
I just find it really clunky.
The adaptation of it doesn't quite fit in episode 1.
I just think it's
Could you
really
go into
clunky.
it a bit more, Lou? What you didn't like?
I find the world so heightened, and I find all the performances and the dialogue really clunky. It's like a bubblegum thriller. It's a really silly thriller,
that's his style of book, though.
I can never just relax into it because it's just too silly.
Not everything. And we've had this conversation before. Not everything's going to be,
No, not
gritty,
everything is. No.
Fly on the wall. And if you're only looking for that one thing in every drama, you're not going to get it. And this is a different sort of story and things like that. So, what specifically in this genre didn't you like?
I didn't buy any of it. The particularly there's a conversation that Richard Armitage has with Dervla Kerwin when he confronts her, and I thought That's good. We're getting the confrontation in the first episode. We're not waiting around for them to have their "what's this all about" conversation. But after it, the way they delivered it is really clunky. The acting's really it's cheesy. I think it's cheesy.
Okay.
That's the word I'm looking for. Like Deadwater Fell, that is gritty and dark and the sort of thing I like. But that went off the boil for me as well, because David Tennant slowly morphs into a panto villain and it becomes less about the people around him and things. But I stuck with that. This I just find cheesy.
I'm sort of somewhere in the middle in this. I found it an easier watch than the first episode of Safe. You know, this
Right.
sort of, you know, secrets bubbling under sort of suburbia is seems to be the sort of recurring theme. You know, I thought it was well paced. The story was intriguing enough. I think it's lifted by the actors that are in it here. You know, you've got Siobhan Finneran, Richard Armitage, Dave Coben. I thought we were all good. But yeah, I can see what Luke means. Some of the dialogue was quite clunky. Certainly the scenes between Siobhan Finneran and her younger partner all seemed, you know, a bit written rather than natural. Yeah. And Jennifer Saunders seemed to be in a completely different program from everyone else. So, there are two other good actors that come into it later that aren't in episode one. Yeah, Anthony Head comes into it as Richard Armitage's father. Okay.
And as another police detective, and I can't remember his name, but I know he played Dennis Pennis.
Paul Kay,
and he's very good. And I think Luke would find it easier to follow his storyline and relate to him than maybe some of the others. Because I do agree that although Richard Armitage does go through a good range of emotions in the series, his opening performance is quite dull. But I think there's a reason for that. It basically means he opens up as the series goes on, as he reveals more, as he finds more. But at the beginning, he's a lawyer. You really only know that he's been married. You know, his wife lost a baby. He's got 2 kids. He's helping Stephen Rea fight for his life. That's all you know about him in episode 1. That's really not the basis of it, and you do get more. But I do see what Luke means. I mean, obviously, I don't agree, because I think the story moves along at quite a pace. I think the characters are quite believable. If you've ever lived in that kind of middle class sort of area where everybody knows everybody,
like Gary does.
Like Gary does.
I'm learning.
You'll be in the next Harlan.
I'm gonna kill an alpaca.
It's gonna be all around the dodginess of this parish council.
Well, that's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Is it going to be a bit like your new village? Is it going to be a bit like Hot Fuzz, where you all sort of kill off the ne'er-do-wells for the? I do understand what Luke means. What I use is the old airport novel thing, isn't it? It's one of the, turn the page thrillers.
He writes about 6 a year, which gives you some idea of how prolific he is.
Whereas sort of, story sort of trumps character, really, doesn't it? In these in these books, so that's what we're getting here. And if you enjoy sort of a good page turner like Gary does, it's easier to see why he'd like it. Whereas Luke, you're all about characters and believing in the worlds and things like that, which you don't get in this.
It was just the clunkiness of it, really, and the sort of, it didn't take itself overly seriously, but it didn't take itself as a jokey thing. It's somewhere in the middle. And to your point, Matt, I know you like to be objective on things, and I know you have a busy life and you barely watch TV and blah blah blah, all the things we say every week. but if you were truly intrigued, you would have found a gap to watch the next one.
Well, I only watched the first episode yesterday.
It was only Thursday, Luke.
Yeah, and I watched it yesterday, Luke.
We're recording on Sunday.
And then I had to go and see Friends and watch The Masked Singer, which,
Yeah, my blood is slowly boiling. So The Stranger is on Netflix now. I found it hard to find on Netflix as well. I don't know whether it's because I've been so adverse to the other ones.
There hasn't been a huge... No, this is... I mean, like, there's been more press about the fact that it was The Good Place last episode and BoJack Horseman last series, rather than...
The Stranger.
Yeah.